Hey there, so I want to apologize in advance for not having a good video component for this video discussion. I wasn't able to get a bunch of my old OBS plugins that coordinated with Discord working, so instead what you're going to have is my MTG RPG video cut up as B-roll over top of this. Apologies if it's hard to follow who is who. Our voices are fairly distinct from one another, so I hope that's good enough. But hopefully you enjoy the discussion anyway. Hello everybody, I am Alex, the Hugmonger, and today I'm everybody's arch frenemy because we are going to be talking about the new color pie change, the hybrid mana change that was proposed by Wizards of the Coast today. Wizards of the Coast is asking for feedback on whether they should be changing the rules around hybrid mana, allowing it in the colored deck of either color mana on the split pip. And today we're going to be talking to RenoStJohn and the BeamTown Artisan about what they think and try to see if we can't work it out. So, Reno, how about you introduce yourself?
And good evening, everybody. My name's RenoStJohn, and you can find me on Blue Sky. You can climb my link tree and find all the cool things that I do. Other than that, jumping right into the meat of who I am, I've been around Magic since Odyssey block. I drafted a ton of Lorwyn. I was there for the beginning of EDH and when it turned into Commander and where we are now.
Awesome. I'm I'm always chuffed to hear other people who are huge fans of Lorwyn. I mean, I got started paying attention back in Time Spiral, so right around the same time, or right around that time, I should say. And, of course, like I said, we have the BeamTown Artisan here with us today. BeamTown, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself to us? Who are you?
Hi everyone, I'm a BeamTown Artisan. You can find me on Blue Sky. That's pretty much it. I just post on Blue Sky. But I have been playing since probably around Invasion, so just a little bit longer than Reno. Starter like 2000 or something. Might have been my first pack that I ever opened. I took a little break starting at Mirrodin. I came back at Lorwyn, so it also has a special place in my heart. Lorwyn block is great. Yeah, that's about it.
So the way this conversation started actually with the three of us is because I was having the conversation with Reno, where I think it was Reno, you were very down on the hybrid change, and I was like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. And then halfway through our conversation, I was like, okay, maybe it'll be that bad, which is where the conversation with BeamTown picked up. Would that be about right?
Yeah,
That sounds about right.
it seemed about right.
Okay, so Reno, how about you actually lead us off? Because as I said, the conversation I was having started with you being kind of down on the idea of the hybrid mana change.
Yeah, kind of down is a fairly accurate way to present my position, especially with how Tone can read on Blue Sky. But I really just kind of lean towards not doing it. The format is the format, math is math, the format is the format. If you change the color identity rules, you have a new format. And I'm fine with that. New formats are great. I'm tracking a ton of them as a side project. But you can't still call it Commander if it doesn't have Commander rules. And that's kind of where I started this morning when I woke up and groggily posted out what I posted out on the Blue Sky. And it devolved from there.
Yeah, it really did kind of just devolve into it was a bit of extended back and forth, or maybe extended, because yeah, we had the conversation that ran through the three color legends from Capenna, where I was like, but what you're saying doesn't necessarily apply to these guys. But I think you did have a pretty interesting point partway through when we finally kind of got to it. Do you remember the concern we got to there?
I mean, I have my Blue Sky open, but I'm not exactly reading from it here. Was it the capitalism parts that you enjoyed?
No. It was the point you had made. I might just read the Blue Sky post, because it was, I worry that one or two color legends will be designed into a 3 to 4 color hybrid cost, purely for making it easier to build Commander and this feels like it undermines the color pie division of power and the natural card design process. And this was my understanding is this is like the problem that people have with General Tazri and with Kenrith. And my understanding of your objection is that problem. It's like they're just going to start sneaking pips in wherever they can.
Yeah, and it feels like an encroachment on what should be a much more rigid evaluation of what each color is bringing to that specific, in this case, legendary creature, and in the context of Commander, what that means to the 99 that you're going to be building. I mean, we've to touch on something that we've talked about in the background, we've seen the meme deck that was put up on Moxfield, and nobody really wants to play against a pseudo 5-color that's helmed by Risk the Redeemed. Funny, but it's not like something I want to see at FNM.
Yeah, and following on from that conversation, I think BeamTown, you had actually, I think, a fairly strong counterpoint to this, because it was, like I said, going on from my conversation with Reno led right into the conversation with you. Why don't you go ahead and give us the affirmative case, as it were?
So you had posted about Ulalek and how it could theoretically just be almost anywhere, really, depending on how they exactly do that change. And I had a couple of points in there of one that like Ulalek would be really, really hard to cast in most decks still, even if with this change, especially with that colorless pip in there. And that ultimately it probably really wouldn't be that much worse than like Roaming Throne, to be honest. Potentially. I can't see the future. I'm not a game designer. You know, that big caveat on everything. But the other point was really that, and I got this from Kess Wiley, I believe, by allowing for these additional pips, Wizards might be less likely to be making these 4 and 5 color monstrosity commanders, because it's giving potentially more cards that are in color pie. It's giving more potential cards to those without expanding out on what your commander is. Great example is the red-white sorcery from Shadowmoor that gives an additional combat step. It's like tertiary in white combat steps. They haven't really printed a mono white one, but it is theoretically possible. And by making this change, white suddenly now gains this extra combat ability. Again, gains isn't really it because it is supposed to be within its ability. They just haven't printed it. If that makes sense. I'm trying not to ramble here.
The idea here is that if they do make this change, that it will, you think, be less incentive for Wizards to print another Tazri, as they will, you know, be able to print their green-white Tazri and their blue-red Tazri separately. Is that correct?
Yes. They're trying to be a little bit more inclusive, and that was kind of the point of hybrid, at least if you go back and read like Mark Rosewater's writings about it, was that it's most multicolor is and. It is both of these colors, but the idea of hybrid is supposed to be or. Either color could do it, so the card can go in either deck. A big thing that I've pointed out a few times over the last 36 hours or so is that when I did play Lorwyn block, I had a mono-white Kithkin deck. And when Shadowmoor came out, Shadowmoor and Eventide, they added blue, largely, to the Kithkin. But it was the hybrid pips, and I ran that deck with, technically, if you want to look at it that way, blue-white cards, but no one called my deck blue-white Kithkin. It was mono-white Kithkin.
Okay, so yeah, you're talking like the Mist Meadow Witch and all of that. The
Godhead of All was a big, very good card. All my Kithkin were big. Your guys were all 1/1s. that was 5 hybrid blue-white pips. So I could play it. My deck had nothing but planes in it. There was not a single island because I was on a budget. I was a college kid. I wasn't buying all that. I could barely go to FNM as it was. So yeah, I really leaned in on that basic mana, and those hybrid pips were really good for that. And so that's kind of where I see that ore and that ability to have like this mono white deck that dips into. Again, it's not even dipping into it. They're things that white can do, but they printed the card that way, so they didn't have to print 2 of them.
So on my end, that's why I was like, I'm kind of torn at this point, because I can kind of see that, but there is, to a degree, like that sort of, the way it sounds from Reno, it sounds like a near sacredness to the idea, or maybe less of a sacredness, more of like a, if you do this, you'll like kind of open the floodgates to more of like the pernicious creative designs from Wizards End. Is that about right there, Reno?
Yes, but I'm not gonna go as far as to say pernicious, but it's they're out to make money. They don't necessarily care for better or for worse, one way or the other, about how the game plays, as long as the game plays. It's not that they're going to go in a pernicious direction. It's just that it opens up a design space that was specifically excluded. And it's worth going back and examining Lorwyn and examining the thoughts at the time about hybrid mana, because that's kind of what we're doing again right now. We're going back to Lorwyn, back with more hybrid mana, and I would assume that somewhere in those cards there's going to be a hybrid legendary that would be very interesting under the new rules. But I don't know. I don't know exactly where this rule change comes from, where the proposal comes from. I don't think it comes from a pernicious place. I
Okay.
think it comes from a money-making place. It wants to expand outward rather than upward. It's more expensive to build up than out.
Okay, so then what is the objection here then? Because isn't allowing the change to the multicolor, isn't this like a more positive thing, or am I misunderstanding you somehow here?
Well, I asked the question back. What is it that we are fixing, that players are clamoring to have fixed with this proposal? The game works the way it does. Everybody that plays it right now knows how it plays, how to build, all the restrictions. Are these new people that are coming in that have questions about how to build in the face of Lorwyn coming out, and we need to get this streamlined so it looks a lot more like standard? Or I'm not exactly sure where this came from. So I'm not exactly sure how to address it going forward either, which is why I'm here. Historically speaking, I've been around a while, and I think I can speak to these things, but it's an interesting trend right now, and people are getting a little bit in their feelings about it.
Well, okay, so I know on my end, when I started in the conversation with you, I was, early in the day, I was like, okay, this sounds like a positive change, in part because of like what it's going to do for specifically monocolor, right? I've tried to build mono red a whole bunch of times, and I get bored. I get bored of monocolor decks.
Not
But if you've got your if you've got every card that's hybrid red, then you have a much higher chance for like the weirdo factor. As far as I've seen, hybrid mana cards have a much higher chance of being weird.
Sure.
They have a higher chance of feeling a little tonally weird, but I think that is related to the fact that hybrid is so much different from other multicolor, or at least it's supposed to be. Because other multicolor cards are supposed to be, these are multiple things that go on it, that can go on a card, but they don't belong to the same color. For some reason, Terminate's the only thing that can come to mind right now, which is not a good example because black can just destroy pretty much any creature anyway.
There is a cycle there. You've got Mortify, Putrefy. Sure, there's black there, but they target different things. It's the
Yeah.
division of the color pie that we're speaking to.
Yes, but there are things where, oh, the guild mages are actually a great example because some people have asked, those original guild mages that had the hybrid pips in them, would they be allowed? And the answer is no, because their abilities are very specifically, here's a white ability, here's a green ability. And that would still make it so that they are not, the Selesnya one with the white and the green ability could not be put into a mono green deck still. Even though the casting cost is hybrid, the rest of the card is not. But the two abilities are very much, this is a white thing that it can do and it has a white cost. This is a green thing that it can do, it has a green cost. That is a more traditional version of multicolored. That's the and version of multicolored. It is this and this. Whereas, but most hybrid cards are supposed to be white can do extra combat, red can do extra combat. It may not both be primary in those colors, but they can both do it, and so it is a hybrid card.
Yeah, so you're talking like wave of aggression on that one.
Yes, yes.
I'm a huge fan of retrace, so I actually just went and ordered almost every retrace spell and to throw into a deck.
Great ability. Love retrace. But yeah, so it's that difference between the two that I think gets fuzzy for people. Like ultimately they are both multicolored cards when interacted with in the game. My main thing has really been that hybrid is a change to the deck making process, not the gameplay process. Because it's not really a mechanic, it's a tool for costing things, basically.
Well, and speaking to that for just a moment, that's an interesting point. Off the topic, but adjacent to, I was speaking to a friend of mine, Gamer Dad Bob, and they were saying that basically the difference between having a commander deck that is jank lands and having a commander deck that has all the best lands in it is almost a complete tier unto itself. Maybe there's an argument there that putting these mana pips into hybridization achieves this for cards in your deck the same way that better lands achieve it for you.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay.
Because it does, there's a big difference between a card that has 2 red pips and 2 white pips versus a card that has 4 red and white pips.
Absolutely.
One is significantly easier to cast than the other.
Much more early game flexibility, yes.
And I think that's really like the potential for monocolored and 2-colored decks to kind of compete with the 3, 4, and 5-colored decks in having abilities without dipping outside the color pie.
So looking at the actual hybrid cards, I think that there has already been a significant amount of like interestingly explored space within the hybrid colors that I think works well in the affirmative case here. The Liege cycle, I think, make a really good example of these are two monocolor cards sort of fused together, with perhaps Balefire Liege being, in my mind, the best example. This is both a mono red and a mono white card. It has the 3 red or white pips.
Yeah, I am familiar with the Lieges, and they were one of the stronger arguments at the time for why, when we made Commander the way we made Commander, that we should have maybe not, because they were good. They were a true blend of the two colors without being the power of one color plus another color.
Yes.
They really felt like they perfectly straddled that fence on the color pie and could easily qualify for either deck.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking back to the fixing things, it seems like if we were to make this proposal real, we'd be fixing a small accessibility issue only to make a pips printed on card issue even worse.
Okay, so
in terms of people understanding how to build a commander deck without any prior knowledge of the format.
I also disagree with you there.
Okay.
So when I first started playing Commander, I believe Lorwyn was already out. I can't really remember because it was so long ago.
likely.
I believe Lorwyn was already out. I started back up in, well, yeah, I definitely started back up in playing Magic because I didn't start playing Commander until I got back into Magic. But I remember talking to a friend trying to build a deck, and I did specifically ask them about a hybrid mana cost card, trying to put it, I think maybe my first deck was Niv Mizzet, and I was trying to put some other hybrid card that was either blue or red in the deck, and my friend said, no, you cannot do that. And I said, why? Hybrid pips are either or. This could be a blue card or a red card. And they said, no, the rule is that if it's got it on there at all, then it doesn't count. And I had this discussion earlier on Blue Sky about, the exact rules of the color identity in Commander, and I don't think the general statement has to be changed, because I'll use Reese the Redeemed as an example. Reese the Redeemed could be, again, as we've discussed, printed solely as a white card or solely as a green card. Everything about it is within color pie for both. But all you really do is change the fact that you're going from and to or. So when you're looking at the pips, does it have this color in it? The answer is yes. Does it have any other colors? No, because I'm choosing this color for my deck, is what I would be saying. So if I wanted to put Reese the Redeemed in my mono white deck, I am choosing it to be white.
Okay, so I think I want to focus on Balefire Liege for a sec. All right. So because Risk the Redeemed can be argued to be kind of both colors, either colors really. Balefire Liege has like 3 red or white and 2 colorless, and I think is split very well evenly. This is, this could easily be 2 separate cards in a mono white and a mono red deck, because other red creatures you can control get +1/+1. If you cast a red spell, this creature deals 3 damage to target player or planeswalker. Other white creatures get +1/+1. When you cast a white spell, you gain 3 life. And I think this is probably a better example than something like Riss for like a sort of focal point in this conversation, because this one, it works best when you're playing in both colors, but I think it supports either color fairly well. Where do you land on the idea that Balefire Liege is like is like what we should be printing for the split pips, their Reno? Like if the change did happen, is this the kind of card that you think would work well, or is this the kind of thing that you are gesturing at as a negative?
Well, I do like this card. I played this card and drafted this card a lot. I'm going to look up another card here. Yeah, there it is. As another example of that design space that I enjoy, which is Batwing Broom, a very popular card that prevents combat damage if you spend white on the spell, or players loses life if you spend black on it. And you can spend both. It has enough room to do both. This was fairly exciting when it came out. And so was Balefire Liege. And of course, I would love to see more of that, pretty much regardless what they do with the mana pips rule, with the hybridization rule.
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
It's just good design to say, if you want this side of the color pie, you pay this. If you want this other side, you pay that. It goes back to, well, everything's kicker.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And I mean, in this case, it's a good way to make kicker not kicker.
Mhm.
It feels different. It feels like the plane from a flavor aspect, and it feels mechanically different from every other mechanic that's like it.
Mm-hmm. So is the proposition then that this is should the hybrid pip rule change happen, this is the sort of thing they should be making? Or because I'm trying to
I think the way I
expound
want to frame
more.
it is that this is what I would expect.
Okay.
Right out of the gate, like, this is, I don't know when they're spoiling lore, and I heard they're already doing some of that. But I would expect cards like this to be what they bring out first, to show, very interested old players that we're going back to Lorwyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have seen cards like this with the spoiled Deceit and Emptiness are very much so on the side of Batwing Brum, where they're 2 different colors, they're split colors. In the current and even the proposed rules change, things like Batwing Broom, Deceit, and Emptiness would still only qualify for decks with both colors, because it has the colors in the text box, similar to the Guild Mages. Which is why I wanted to center around something where it is kind of 2 cards, or the new Cheering Crowd's a fun example of, like, here's a mana ramp source that would go from being green-red to green or red. This is from the Spider-Man deck. Beginning of each player's first main phase, they may put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. If they do, they add a colorless for each counter on it. This would be very fun to have in a mono red deck as like a ramp piece. The question I have for you, Reno, is does pushing this kind of design more read as a negative to you, or does this read as the negative you worry about?
No, this isn't bad. It seems like a good draftable card, which is what I look at first and foremost. I come from drafting pretty heavily, and it's something that I would definitely pick if I were in either of those colors and looking to make a 60 card deck after I was done drafting.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great. Like I love that design space for limited. In Commander, maybe a little bit less, but it's not powerful, it's not out of place.
Yeah.
It's sitting more or less where it should. I'm okay with that. Like everything kind of has to be viewed from how badly it's messing with the color pie in my opinion
Hmm.
Yes.
going forward. If we're
Yeah.
going to move the rule, then that's where the meat and potatoes are.
hmm
So, is there any cards that you're thinking of that like this kind of breaks expectations or anything along those lines, or is it more a moving forward sort of anxiety?
Well, are we talking about things like that Eldrazi or Diata?
So I actually wasn't sure what the idea with Dihada was because Dihada doesn't have split pips.
It's fair. It was a tangent that I went off on this morning a little bit. But my point there was that the way things have been trending with Commander over the years, it's been focused on more, it's been featured more. They've tried to do more things within the rule set to sell more products that are Commander.
hmm
We've gotten literal Planeswalker commanders that had a line on it to get around Planeswalkers can't be your commander. It's that I see more legendaries coming out because
hmm
that's where Commander goes. People want to build a legendary deck with their favorite legend from a set,
hmm
and then we're going to have all these hybrid pips.
Yeah.
Diata's already kind of a fun stuff deck. You put things in it that she can cast that are legendary, that she can buff, and she just does the thing.
hmm
You know
And
that
I don't want that to go 5-color Diata if I can help it. That sounds like a less fun version.
It
oh,
sounds like your main concern is that they would use this hybrid change to start adding abilities to colors that they don't get access to. Is that correct?
More or less, yes. It's kind of like how Impulse Draw has crept into red,
hmm
and
mhm.
it's not like it doesn't belong. It feels good in red,
But
but
they
the
created it
further you
for
go
Commander.
back, the more it doesn't belong.
And they created Impulse Draw more or less for Commander. It was a response to the fact that Red didn't really do anything in Commander for the longest time.
Y-
Yeah,
It could not keep up with
I
the
have
other
a Heartless
colors.
Hidegsu deck. I know the pain.
yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah, that
it's
was one of my early ones. It was rough.
Punisher draw in white and Impulse draw in red because white can't draw cards and red can't draw cards, so we got to fix that somehow. Okay, so part of the issue that it sounds like you've had consistently there, Reno, and it's one I want to throw over to Beamtown, is the idea that moving forward, this hybrid pips thing is going to the Ulalek conversation, the overly dramatic post that I've made about Ulalek, is that moving forward in the future, what we're going to see is just Ulalek all the way down. It's going to be everything becomes hybrids. First off, is that a probably overly dramatic, but somewhat accurate version of what you were thinking there, Reno?
I'm sorry, can you run that by me one more time?
It's
I wasn't expecting you to swerve to me. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, that's fine.
sorry. It's the issue that you've been gesturing at is that it kind of becomes hybrids all the way down. If they make this switch, they're just going to be more and more encouraged to put hybrid mana cost onto everything.
Yes, and I think that's going to be. I mean, I don't think they're going to default to
Mhm.
oops all gold borders, but
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a fairly heavy encroachment, and just like we've seen in the quantity of legends.
Mhm.
If it sells, they'll do it.
Interestingly, that has been something that I read. So I'm a stay-at-home dad. I have a lot of time on my phone. Um, especially because my one kid's in school, but the other one is one, so she's not really.
Aw.
She doesn't do that much.
So you
She
read
does.
her
She does a
Morrow
lot.
articles.
Oh, I read them to
Together.
myself. I read them to myself. But yeah. But I do read Blogatog fairly often.
Mhm.
Um, and something that has been brought up already before this whole discussion started was that, particularly for draft purposes, Wizards of the Coast and R&D particularly like hybrid mana right now. They think it plays really well and it helps them with a lot of draft environments. And so that we should be already expecting to see more hybrid mana. Whether that's them saying this is a good design tool and we're going to do it, but now we want to make Commander go that way, or is it we want to sell more Commander and this is going to be the other thing? I don't know. I think one of the more fundamental things is that I said this to my wife the other day. I do not trust Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast as corporations because I don't
Yeah.
trust corporations. But
Yeah, it's an unfortunate truth.
but the designers, the individual designers that I follow, I do trust those people to do the best that they can to make a good game. I think they love the game. I don't think they want to destroy the game, even though everyone jokes that Mark Rosewater is going to destroy the game. Um,
It's,
I don't think any of them really want to do that. For one, they'd obviously be out of a job. That would be bad. But two, I think they all just enjoy playing the game.
yeah. Now, one of the problems that I've had, and this is probably something I've heard more than I've actually read from Morrow, is the idea that the hybrid mana rule amongst design as it exists right now is fairly disliked because it makes it harder to design cards. The thing
Yes, he had a post about that today.
okay, the thing I dislike about that objection, I think might be more of a don't touch my stuff sort of objection. Um, because the issue is it making design too easy. I mean, it takes the effort out, right? You want that effort to be in place. You want it to be there for the designers. You want them to you want to know they're like quote putting heart into this instead of just printing a bunch of red blue cards that draw cards and green blue cards that draw cards and white blue cards that draw cards. That way they don't have to, we're not going to break the color pie. We're just going to print a bunch of, no, these definitely aren't just blue cards. Which is, I think it's part of the anxiety that I have, and it sounds like a similar anxiety to what Reno here has. Is that accurate? Like instead of fixing red card draw by printing something that feels red, well, what if we just print a red blue card or a red green card because green can do everything?
Yeah, I definitely feel like that is a pitfall. And I agree that design plays the game and that they like the game, and that generally speaking, Wizards leadership, Wizards employees play the game and like the game. I had occasion in Atlanta to speak to a couple of them, and they do really have a passion for it.
Yeah.
So I don't question that they want to destroy the game. That's
Yeah.
that's just people trying to sell YouTube clicks, really.
Oh yeah.
But I do question Mark Rosewater. And every time he said something about the commander direction going forward, that he's had to go back on completely or walk back on dramatically. And it's left an overall sour taste in my mouth and a lot of other players' mouths from
Yeah.
having to eat these sad candy bars he gives us sometimes. And that's
I
kind of what it is. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to go into the details, but I don't read what he puts out anymore. It doesn't matter to me. The game's
Yeah.
going to do what it does, and his direction is to make money.
Totally get that. There are things I definitely disagree with a lot of the things that he puts in his blog, especially when it feels at least like he's getting dismissive of player concerns. And I do think he tries to like at least walk that back where he's like, he gives the answer, but it's a short blog he does in his free time. It's not like he's going to sit there for 5 hours thinking about the best way to answer this person. So he can be a little curt sometimes in his answers, but I think that he has to walk that line too, where he is a public face for a corporation. He can't just be telling us things in the future. So when things do change, he can't. He ends up having to walk things back because obviously he knows, the universe is beyond is the other obviously big controversy everyone always has. And as things have changed with universes beyond, obviously he knew it was coming, but he couldn't tell us because, NDAs and whatnot. That's not how that works. And I would love for him to be like, oh no, in 5 years from now, this is definitely what we're doing. I would love for him to be able to tell us these things, and then he never have to walk anything back. So I get not trusting what he says, but I do give him some leeway on that part because he's walking a line that most game companies do not. Almost every game out there is not someone that will sit there and talk to the community on his free time.
Yeah, that's one of the things I want to make
That
sure.
isn't a PR person anyway,
Right. That's one of the things I want to make sure that we do acknowledge in the conversation is that like Maro's Blogatog, it's actually not a great source of information. Maro has come up with like the idea of the storm scale and the Rabia scale, and we've got all of the stuff from his Blogatog and everything from Wizards of the Coast, everything from Magic sets and so on, do not line up with a lot of Maro principles. This is not Mark Rosewater presents Magic the Gathering. It is Magic the Gathering from Wizards of the Coast. Despite being such a prominent face, I actually sometimes wonder if that doesn't work against the game real bad.
It might. There's definitely upside and downside to having someone who is so entrenched in the actual process of creating the game also trying to talk to people outside of it.
Like, ultimately, I do think it's a good thing. And, like, his objections to saying that the hybrid mana was meant to be both colors, not just one. It's not one and the other. It's literally both at the same time. And how it's supposed to improve diversity. I think it makes a lot of sense to me. If you look at the way colorless mana works, right? We don't say that you have to have specifically colorless in your color identity to have a colorless card. And yes, the way I understand the Rosewater position is that hybrid mana is meant to be closer in the ludonarrative sense to colorless mana than a solid pip is.
I could see that. The colorless, or I mean hybrid, not colorless. Hybrid just falls into a very weird space, and there's a lot of different reasons why. There's a lot of people arguing that you shouldn't have a green creature on the field in your white deck, but it's a deck building tool rather than a mechanic. Like there's nothing about hybrid that is mechanically relevant once you start the game. Like the hybrid costs themselves are not really mechanically relevant once the game starts. Mechanically relevant when you're deciding whether you put it in the deck or not.
You know what? Actually, I think there's a fun historical bit to bring up there, and because all three of us started so far back. You guys probably know what I'm gonna bring up. Originally, Chromatic Lantern didn't work.
Oh yeah.
Originally in Commander, your commander's color identity restricted the colors of mana you can produce. Actually, I want to throw this one over to Reno real quick. Do you think that might be a better direction to go? Is keeping stricter to color identity? Probably you wouldn't want us to go back all the way to your Penta lands can only produce the colors of your commander, but is somehow being stricter on that better?
Well, I think it speaks to my opening remarks about the sanctity of the format. The format is the format. We can only change it so much before there will be enough external pressure for people, a group to form that says we're going to play it the old way. If it gets bad enough, it fractures the whole base in half. But generally speaking, that's not how these things go. Pre-EDH is not a huge format, but it's there. And there's other smaller tweaks that have been tried. Some have been backed away from as a failed attempt, and some keep going.
I said Tiny Leaders.
I think Tiny Leaders is still going, but I think I was referring to a format called Captains.
Oh.
That had fallen out of favor because the creators decided it really wasn't different enough or interesting enough, and apparently people also had feelings about that format. I might be getting the name wrong, but essentially.
I was just joking about Tiny Leaders because I never hear about it anymore.
That's fair, and it's only 50 cards, so I mean, It's half the deck size. It gets hidden behind bigger decks all the time.
I guess for BeamTown then, the question I guess the question to you is like, why? So you're more on the affirmative side for the hybrid change. Like originally in my mono red or red green deck, in my wart deck I had back in the day, even if I had my chromatic lantern, or I had Tomb of Yawgmoth, even if I had Urborg in the deck, I still couldn't produce the black mana. Why is it better to move away from that more strict identity, do you think?
So one, even the lands producing mana, that is an interesting thing that a lot of people have brought up. But another thing that people have been bringing up, well, actually not people, I've been bringing up, is that even before that, commanders were only identified by the mana value or the mana cost. I remember when Bosch Iron Golem was completely unplayable. You couldn't have the basics in your deck. You couldn't even activate his ability because you couldn't produce with red mana. You couldn't run red cards in the deck. It essentially was banned. It was so bad that it was essentially just a banned card. Unless you really, really, really wanted to buy very expensive colorless lands and attempt to build a deck from there. So like we've already made that change from the original color identity rules. The rules aren't set in stone. They are to some degree flexible. I'm not saying that we go all one way or the other. I mean, if we want to go all the way back, we could just make the Elder Dragons our commanders again and say F the rest. So I think that the line isn't set. I think it could kind of shift back or forth a little bit. I am for shifting it towards a little bit more freedom, the potential for maybe some cool designs that R&D couldn't do before. I actually don't mind the idea of adding the hybrid mana and then kind of switching back on how we produce mana again. That might be an okay way of assuaging fears. Kess Wiley, actually, that was part of what he was saying, is that he thought that might be a good compromise. Let's add hybrid mana, but you can only make that colored deck in your deck anymore. And then all the Send Triplets players get really sad.
That's okay. They can be sad.
Yeah. As opposed to some of the newer ones where they're saying specifically you can use any color of mana. Those ones, they'll be fine. Send Triplets, forget those guys.
Okay, yeah. Like that's an interesting idea. So the idea would be you could have your Balefire Liege in either your red or your white deck, but for any card that's not Balefire Liege, you're not paying white mana in your red deck, or you're not paying white mana in any way. Like, what do you think of that one, Reno, as like a alternative to the just leaving mana the way it is and changing the hybrid rule?
I'm trying to follow, but I'm not exactly sure I follow what you're getting at here.
The idea in this case would be to go back to the original mana rules with Commander, but to change the color identity rules to be either or for split pips.
So
I think what I'll say to this... Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you've got your restack. Your City of Brass can only make green or white, but then you run your red-white hybrid card. It can never make the red mana. You're just making white.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to go with it too, because restrictions are what make a format. There's really no reason to play Commander if you're not willing to make the deck by the rules, and it goes all the way down as hard as you want to restrict your deck. Mm-hmm. There's formats that literally tell you exactly how many of which card you can have.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the formats aren't all that different. It's just they decided to unlimit or limit.
Yeah.
And there could easily be an unlimited Commander format. Literally Battle of Wits Magic, you have to have 250 cards in your deck or more. But anyway, this is a tangent. I study formats kind of as a side project right now.
Yeah.
So I'm getting very intimate with all kinds of weird shit.
So this conversation about hybrid mana has been bringing up a second conversation that it gets whispers every so often, and I want to hit it with a shovel every time I hear it. So I'm already laying my cards on the table. But color identity in general, you're the one in favor of changing the hybrid rules. What if we just did away with color identity rules altogether in Commander, their BeamTown? Do you see that as being too far?
there is a part of me that would love to start combining certain cards again without having to dig for a commander that I think works for it. That part of me is very small. I do appreciate the restriction of having some kind of color identity. I just think the line isn't necessarily where it needs to be. I don't think it, and again, I don't think this has to be a change. I think that the designers at WotC very much would like it to be a change. If it doesn't change, people have talked about it before. I'll get over it again. If it does change, cool. The only thing that happens to me is I swap a couple cards out in some decks probably.
Yeah. And I can't I mean obviously I assume there, Reno, you're on side with me where it's like, no, color identity is pretty important here. To hold on to in at least some way.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just do away with color identity. It's not Commander anymore. You've made a new format.
I 100%
Which
agree with that. Color identity.
I'm not opposed to. I'd love to try your new format.
Yeah.
But you're talking about a singleton format with a command zone that does something else. I mean, you could just as easily be talking about Arsenal, an 80 card format minimum that has 2 cards in the command zone.
Yeah. And at that point, I mean, you are kind of talking about vintage or legacy in my mind. But I think that is a good place to leave off this conversation. Reno, go ahead and shout yourself out again, just so folks know where to find you.
Sure. Wrapping up here, I'm RenoStJohn. You can find me on Blue Sky. You can also climb my link tree and find all the cool things that I do there, like making cubes and tracking alternate formats, which I do a lot of. Wednesday nights is my normal night for my Rogue radio show, Inner Sleeves, but I gave that up tonight to have this rousing conversation. You can join me next week, more than likely, though, if you want whole albums while you do your TCG chores.
Awesome. And, BeamTown, if you want to promote yourself or anything else, go right on ahead.
I'm BeamTown Artisan over on Blue Sky. I don't really do much besides post. It's mostly Magic, maybe a little sci-fi, and some politics stuff. So if you want opinions, I have them.
Yeah.
I follow a lot of great people. So if you want to flip through my follower list, at least there's some really great content creators, artists, and stuff like that that I follow as well. So at the very least, I'm a hub for looking for other things.
Yeah, and thank you guys for coming into the conversation. We probably got to a bit meandering. I'm probably gonna have to do a fair amount of editing down, but it's been really, really fun to have the conversation. And if topics like this come up again, maybe I will try to haul you guys back on for more chats. And I have other friends who are interested in more conversations like this. So if folks are interested in more conversations with the Magic community, I'm going to try to do so more often, though anybody who looks at my YouTube page might notice it doesn't happen very often, but I will try. But that is going to be it for now. Thank you, everyone, and good night.